Thanks for coming out today, guys. We're going to talk about skin cancer, and this isn't going to be really what you guys expect, probably. We're not going to go into every different type of skin cancer. I'm not going to talk about all the treatment options for every type of thing. It's not going to be like that. Because what I'm an expert in is getting people well and keeping them well. Getting them well. I'm not into, well, what's your symptom, what's your disease, and let's find all these treatment options available. I'm not the expert for that. But if you want to get healthy, this is the place to be right here. And so what we're going to go over is 3 specific questions, and this is what we're going to answer today. Number 1, should we avoid the sun? That's the first question. Number 2, does the sun cause skin cancer? It's a fair question. And number 3, how can we maximize our health and life expectancy while preventing skin cancer? So we're going to cover those 3 things today. And what really wanted me to do this topic in the first place is this new recommendation that's becoming very commonplace in our healthcare system. And right now, the U.S. Surgeon General, the American Academy of Dermatology, and countless other cancer organizations are literally putting out a recommendation to completely avoid the sun at all costs. Now, you're not talking about, get 1 minute of sun. You're not talking 5 minutes. You're talking completely have sun avoidance. And I like my sign there, There's literally, those are like the warning signs at your dermatologist now. It's that crazy. So that if so many people are doing this, it's like, what's going on? What do they really have a method to this? What seems to be pretty madness to me? And so, one question for you guys. If you had to pick, there's going to be 2 pictures up here. I want you to tell me which one would be worse. Do you think sitting in a cubicle all day and being completely devoid of the sun is worse for your life expectancy? Or do you think smoking would be worse for your life expectancy?
Sitting in a cubicle.
Okay, you guys are too smart. You guys stop. Knock it off. What do you think most people would think? Smoking. Okay. Now, what if I told you all you are wrong? What if I told you it was equal? Oh, yeah. Okay. So
it was a trick question.
It was a trick question. I tricked you. Yeah. So this is the craziest study ever. Groundbreaking. This happened in the end of March this year out of the Journal of Internal Medicine. And it's called Avoidance of Sun Exposure as a Risk Factor for Major Causes of Death. And this is the article that really sparked my curiosity about this subject, so this is what we're going over. And so every time I refer to a study, it's this study. Yep. Sun avoidance is scary. Yeah. Okay, so this is what they found in this study. And what you're going to look, the recent research from this Journal of Internal Medicine, the medicine's own journal, found out that sun avoidance is actually as dangerous as smoking when it comes to cancer and overall mortality risks. So, 2 things, smoking and avoiding the sun, those cause you to die early the exact same. Crazy. We always hear about smoking being one of the worst things ever. And in fact, non-smokers who avoided the sun had the exact same life expectancy as smokers who got sun throughout their entire lives. The exact same life expectancy. And this wasn't just some mere small study, not a case study. This was done on 30,000 women over a period of 20 years. So this is big time. This is groundbreaking here. What they found out, and I'm going to throw out some direct quotes from this study because it's so cool. This indicates that avoiding the sun is a risk factor for death of a similar magnitude as smoking. And the researchers acknowledge that the longer life expectancy for sunbathers seems paradoxical to the common method of thinking. You think, yeah, weird, yes. I wonder if the American Academy of Dermatology got the memo. I don't know. One of the strengths of the study was that results were dose specific. So what that means is that the more often you were in the sun, the better your results were, the longer you lived. The more sun you had. And that seems crazy to me too. Now, here, I love this. This is actually the author of this entire study. he is quoted as saying, "We know in our population there are 3 major risk factors that cause early death, and that's smoking, being overweight, and inactivity. But we now know that there's a 4th, avoiding sun exposure." So that's why it's so crucial. And sometimes what I like to think about is, well, is it possible to just not get sun and just take a vitamin D supplement? Because again, that's a fair question, you know, I mean, I don't know, so let's check it out. Now, the sunlight, the benefits that really have to do with vitamin D3 specifically are it completely slashes your risk for cancers. And you're talking by 67%. Nothing else can come close to these numbers here. And you're talking over a dozen different cancers that are way more common and way more deadly than skin cancer. You know, most people who get skin cancer don't die. Most people. Now, when you're looking at this, the vitamin D main researcher, Dr. Michael Hollick, said that, and this was almost a decade ago, that avoiding sun exposure to prevent skin cancer results in such a drop in vitamin D levels that for every life saved from skin cancer, over 100 people will lose their lives to other forms of cancer. So that puts it in perspective how kind of, I'm not going to say how not important skin cancer is compared to the whole picture, but it's really a very small portion of the entire big picture. A lot of other cancers are way more deadly and way more common. Prostate, lung, breast, those are the big boys there. Skin cancer is way down here on the food chain. And so what you're looking at this is what vitamin D does, and this is how it honestly prevents cancer in the first place, is that when sunlight hits your skin converts that vitamin D into something called calcitriol. Now that's the active portion that activates in the body, and what that does is it actually repairs dead dysfunctional cells. So we're talking about skin cancer, so it repairs dead skin cells that have a potential to become cancerous and malignant. And it also causes apoptosis of cancer cells. So it literally kills cancer cells. That's what that means. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. So sunlight hits your skin, vitamin D gets activated into calcitriol, kills off cancer. That's why vitamin D has such huge research on the diminishing of cancer. So it also, when vitamin D gets in your body, it also makes this substance called E-cadherin. I'm just going to call it cadherin here, but this cadherin is a glue-like substance, and what it does is that it's basically like if you have just, say cells are marbles, and if you just let the marbles if you drop them, it's just going to spread out everywhere. Cadherin is this glue-like substance that keeps all of those cells together, and that's on the outer layer of your organs. So you're talking, it's called the epithelial layer, so the outer layer of your skin, breast, prostate, everything. It's the outer layer. So when you have adequate levels of vitamin D, it turns into something called cadherin, and it basically keeps this glue-like substance intact, keeping your skin cells, your every type of other cells intact. Now what happens when you lose proper amounts of vitamin D? Now you're not able to make cadherin. Now that glue-like substance isn't there to keep those cells intact, so now those cells start to go off. And what do? They do what they're programmed to do. They start multiplying because they're not used to not having that glue-like structure with them, so they start to multiply, and when they keep multiplying and that proliferation becomes chronic, you get malignancy, you get cancer. And what they found out is that if someone came in with breast cancer, you know, and had low vitamin D levels, which they are, once you restore their vitamin D levels naturally through the sunlight, they automatically build up that cadherin. It starts to form that glue-like substance, it binds to those cells, and it stops cancer dead in its tracks. And it reverses it, literally does. And so when you're talking about cancers, almost everyone is at has low vitamin D levels. And the thing is, it's one of the easiest tests to take. You know, you go and get it checked, you want it between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter. Now, chemotherapy does not have very many studies, peer-reviewed studies supporting its efficacy. Vitamin D in cancer has over 830 peer-reviewed articles. Peer-reviewed. I mean, it's that important. So when people have cancer and stuff, you know, do you think they're hearing about the importance of vitamin D, sun exposure? No, they're hearing the exact opposite. I mean, look at the dermatology board. Look at our U.S. Surgeon General. I mean, this guy's got to be smoking something. I mean, completely avoid sun exposure, are you kidding me? When they already know that the more sun you get, the longer you live and the healthier you are and the more you avoid cancer. I mean, it's criminal what they're avoiding. I mean, in fact, if you take all the recommendations that the US Surgeon General gives you, if you do the exact opposite, you are going to live longer than everybody else. If you flip their food guide upside down, if you basically just don't listen to anything they do and do the exact opposite, run the other way, you're going to be better off. I know, we live in a great world.
It also means less money for their pockets.
It does. It does, because we all know their goal is not for our health. It's for profits. Exactly. They wouldn't be doing any of this stuff. I mean, look at GMOs. So, sunlight benefits, and this is the crucial thing, it goes so much further beyond vitamin D production. You know, we always think of sunshine as the vitamin D, you know, the vitamin D thing. That's part of it. It is. But you're talking, it lowers not only, when it showed that study and it showed that it lowered all-cause mortality risk, they didn't know it was definitively because of the vitamin D. You know, it's hard to measure what that was. But what it also does is that dramatically reduces your risk of heart disease. Heart disease is only the #1 killer in the US. And so you're thinking, how does it lower your risk of heart disease? Well, when vitamin D hits your skin, it causes your skin to produce, or not your skin, but it causes your body to produce more nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is what people with heart disease get, and they take it in prescription form with a dozen side effects. But that nitric oxide is what opens up blood vessels. It dilates all your blood vessels. I mean, vastly improving circulation to your body. When you open up blood vessels, your heart has to work a lot less. It reduces blood pressure. That's completely separate from vitamin D. So what this means is that vitamin D supplements, they have no effect on that part. So if you're just taking vitamin D, you know, instead of you getting actual sun exposure, you're missing that entire blood pressure lowering effect from the natural increase in nitric oxide. So you're not going to get that decrease in heart disease. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death. So you're still not going to be up in that high percentile who's getting sun exposure and living a long, healthy life. You're not going to be getting that. And then also too, when we're talking about vitamin D supplements, vitamin D is not even a vitamin. It's a steroid hormone. Sunlight reacts with your skin and it forms this steroid hormone called vitamin D. So the idea that they can make it in a lab and have us take it and have it be the exact same as something called sunlight and what our body makes naturally, you can't do that. You can't make something in a lab that our body makes naturally. You know, they like to call things like bioidentical hormones. They aren't bioidentical. Our body makes these special hormones. You can't make that same hormone in a lab separate from all that. It doesn't happen that way. We are so complex, we can't even understand 1% of our human body. So we can't just start making these things in the labs and call them bioidentical. You know, bioidentical, bio completely not identical would be a better, because it's not. And then you look at all the side effects. If it was bioidentical, you would have no side effects for all these things they give you, but because they're not bioidentical. So vitamin D goes way beyond that. Now, in addition, beta endorphin production that you get from sunlight. Beta endorphin is that feel-good endorphins. You know, you get that when you get like that runner's high. You get that natural endorphin release. Well, that's what sunlight does. Mood regulation, mood enhancement. And I like to use this, you know, if patients coming from far away and they're getting multiple adjustments in one day, because sometimes they have to do that if they come from far away, you know, they're only here for a week, so we give them multiple treatments. If they come in, you know, and they're in pain, they're in this crappy mood, you know, what do I tell them to do? I tell them to get outside, go on the beach, walk barefoot. And I tell them, you know, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. And then today, I bet a patient $100. I'm like, I will give you $100 that you will feel better at the end of walking outside in the sun. They're like, oh, you're on, you know. I won. Yeah, they came back, they couldn't, you know, and I didn't take their $100. I just told them to bring me food the next day, you know, but, so we're good, but it works every time. You go outside, what do I usually feel? I usually feel really good, and then I get kind of tired. But you don't feel cranky, you don't feel anxiety, you don't feel nervousness, you don't get any of that stuff because it's a natural beta endorphin production, and you know, that's what it does. Has stuff to do with wound healing. You're talking fighting infections. It's an anti-inflammatory, and it's completely necessary for proper healthy sleep. Do we have a sleeping problem in the world today? I mean, almost every single patient that comes in, they have sleeping problems, or it's sporadic, or it's not consistent. And when we're talking about sleep in general, sleep, you only get adequate sleep if your body produces a proper amount of melatonin, which is a hormone released by your pineal gland. Melatonin, if it's released properly, that has huge anti-cancer benefits. It slashes your risk of cancer. I mean, that's why too, people who get cancer, they're sleeping like crap because they're not getting melatonin. So there's all sorts of these parts, but that makes sense because if you have cancer, you're completely toxic, you're not healthy, so chances are they're not going to be sleeping well. But when you're sleeping well and you have adequate melatonin, there's a couple things that you need to release that proper amount. And number one is that it's only release it needs a response, and the response is a steep contrast from daylight, from the sun, from the light of daytime, and from the darkness at night. That steep contrast our body senses causes a production of melatonin. It needs that steep contrast. So if you don't get light in the day and you expose yourself to too much artificial light at night, you're not getting any contrast. In fact, you're actually kind of doing the opposite. If you're inside all day and not outside, but then at night you're on your laptop and everything, stimulating that blue wavelength type frequency, it actually tricks your body to think it's still daytime. You don't release melatonin, your sleep sucks. You may fall asleep initially, you're going to wake up throughout the night, you're not going to have adequate amounts of melatonin. So you've got to get natural sunlight in the day and complete darkness at night, preferably about 2 hours before. So it sucks too because, I mean, some of the Kindles and stuff are getting better, but I mean, everyone's reading on their iPads, everyone's doing all of this, I tell patients, just read a book. Do you remember what a book is? Think way back, read a book. I can't make it to 2 pages at night and I'm seeing stars and, I mean, it's crazy. So we gotta think about that. And right here, this quote from Authority Nutrition, it turns out that perhaps the single biggest contributor to our collective sleep problem is the use of artificial lighting and electronics at night. These devices emit that light of blue wavelength, which tricks our brains into thinking it's daytime. Basically what I just said. Now, the first question we brought up in the beginning, should we avoid the sun? Obviously, from the abundant research showing how it stimulates brain function, immune function, slashes your risk of cancer, freaking increases lifespan, absolutely not, you should not avoid the sun. If someone says that, you run away. And people saying otherwise are completely ignorant of the research out there. Because there's no research saying that avoiding the sun causes you to live a longer, healthier life. They will never have a research article to give you to promote that. And what's interesting again is that it's dose specific. The more you're out in the sun, the longer you're going to live. And from that study, over 30 years long, women avoiding sun were twice as likely to die than women who got sun. Twice as likely to die. That's crazy. And then this also explains why, and they also showed that women using tanning beds lived longer than women who didn't. So if both groups of women were, basically worked in an office cubicle, but one went in a tanning bed every day, or a couple times a day, they lived longer. And it is fake, it's not real sunlight, but it's still that UV light that gives our body a lot of that benefit. Not the same exactly, but still, that's still pretty crazy there. So when you're talking about skin cancer, it is true that too much sun exposure, chronically getting sunburn can increase your risk for skin cancer. Absolutely true. But again, we only know skin cancer is only, way down the food chain. It also slashes your risk of 100 other cancers. So you gotta weigh your positives and negatives here. And you also gotta realize that it's dose dependent, but again, so the more sun you get, the increased likelihood you may get some skin cancer, but also the longer and healthier you're gonna live. And so you're gonna have to look at those facts for yourself because it is what it is. But when you look at our ancestors, they were outdoors all hours of the day. I mean, they were hardly ever indoors and they were exposed to the sun like crazy. And you never thought of this huge cancer epidemic. I mean, the cancer epidemic didn't even come and cross until the 1900s. And so were they popping vitamin D supplements? Were they doing any of this? No, they were out in the sun and they were healthy. And so they're going completely against the laws of nature when they're just saying, just take a vitamin D supplement. It's not the same. And that's why I really don't take vitamin D. If there's days I don't get sunlight, I do, but I try to, eat lunch outside, try to expose as much skin as possible. And so Kaiser Permanente, out of everyone, they actually get it. Kaiser Permanente, the insurance company, says, how could we have evolved and survived as a species if we were that vulnerable to something humans have been constantly exposed to for their entire existence? Like all living things, we need sunshine. Kaiser. And so when you're looking at skin cancer, 3 main types. You have basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. Now, the only one of those that's definitively associated with the increase in sun exposure or sun overexposure is squamous cell carcinoma. That's the only one that can definitively say that there's actually kind of a link. Melanoma, which is the deadly form of skin cancer, these are the facts. Outdoor workers have decreased risk of melanoma compared to indoor workers. How could that be if the sun caused melanoma? It often appears on areas that rarely get sunlight. So the areas that are getting most sunlight, you're not necessarily getting melanoma in those areas. You're getting, that's not. So again, why is that? You know, it's because vitamin D has that protective anti-cancer effect. That cadherin we were talking about, that glue-like substance it makes, that thing that slashes and it causes apoptosis of cancer cells. It's the vitamin D, but in its natural state. You know, it's not necessarily, I mean, vitamin D supplements they do have their place, but it's not a substitute for sunlight. And so, sunscreen's another big topic. And what I always like to say is dermatologists have been just promoting sunscreen for 30, 40 years. And these are the true facts. If dermatologists were correct and sunscreen did help you avoid melanoma, the deadly form of skin cancer, which is really the one we want to talk about, then you would see that as more percentage of the population took sunscreen, you would see melanoma get slashed, right? You'd see increased sunscreen, decreased melanoma. But the fact is the exact opposite. Over the last 30 years, we've had more sunscreen than ever, and right now we have more sunscreen than ever, and we have more melanoma than ever. So you're seeing a direct correlation there. And so dermatologists are completely off base, completely wrong, telling you to avoid skin or to avoid sunlight. It's absolutely crazy. And again, sunscreen, it completely blocks your body's ability to make vitamin D. So if you have UV rays hitting your body, you know, maybe it causes some photoaging, say it causes some damage, but you're good because your body also is making vitamin D, killing off those potential cancer cells and from anything going on. So you're completely good. So if you're taking a sunscreen, you're still getting those UV rays, but you're not able to make vitamin D, there's a problem. And that's why you're seeing the exact opposite. And the thing is, when you look at an SPF on sunscreen, you have two types of rays from sunlight, UVA and UVB. Well, the SPF only has to do with UVB, and that's the type of the sun rays that you get vitamin D from. UVA rays are more of the, they're more correlated with the photoaging effects, the more of the damage effects from overexposure. So the SPF is completely, so when you're looking at SPF only, you're only talking about actually the good portion of the sun rays that they work on. So sunscreen really works on blocking the good rays we need for vitamin D, but not the crappy rays. I mean, it's a joke, right? Now, there is some, you'd have to look on the back and you want to make sure if you do consume one, you want to make sure that you look and see it says both UVA and UVB, because the SPF only has to do with UVB. And so you also got to make sure it has no toxic ingredients, because sunscreens have cancer-causing materials in them. And you're talking these vitamin A derivatives, and this is the worst one, oxybenzone. This is the one that you want to just avoid at all costs. And that's in your, you know, was it Copperstone, banana boats, all those ones that smell really good, you know? And so, again, those ingredients actually cause those skin cancers to start proliferating and causing malignancy and causing them to spread. So recommendations, allow, if you're going to be out in the sun, say all day, first go 30 minutes without sun exposure or without sunscreen so we can get that vitamin D first, and then you can use a sunscreen. Okay? Make sure the sunscreen is non-toxic, and a good source for all of you guys is if you just type in Environmental Working Group, they have a guide to safe sunscreens. So just type that in Google and you'll go right there, and they have like a little PDF thing, the guide to safe sunscreens. And again, you want to make sure when you read the back of the sunscreen that it says protection from UVB and UVA rays, because the SPF only has to do with UVB, the actually good rays you want, not the UVA. So for the second question, does the sun cause skin cancer? And it's not really a yes or no, because what it comes down to is that too much sun exposure and that chronic sunburn that you get can cause skin cancer, but only if you have a crappy immune system, poor nutrition, and a poor, natural defense against it. Because you want to do something called internal sunscreen. Internal sunscreen is basically your body's defense against any damage the sun can potentially do. So what that really comes down to is increasing the amount of antioxidants in your body. So if you eat a diet abundant with fruits and vegetables, especially raw organic, you're going to be completely fine. One major one is astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is a huge potent antioxidant. It's how salmon get that rich pink color. That one, it stops skin cancer dead in its tracks. It just basically promotes the health and protection of all, not just skin cells, but all cells of the body. So on the third question is, how can we maximize our health and avoid skin cancer? We got to get regular sunlight. I mean, it's duh. You slash your cancer risk, has everything else we talked about. You increase life expectancy, and you lower all-cause mortality. So that's just a no-brainer. Also, you got to avoid sunburn. That's what I would do. And so for beginners, so people who aren't really necessarily used to getting sun every day, I would say start in kind of the early spring and just go, just aim to get, 20 to 30 minutes of sun roughly 2 to 4 days a week. Just start slow and kind of build up your tolerance, because you do build up tolerance to sun. If I haven't gotten in a while and I go out there for a little bit, I'm more prone to get burned. But if I've been out there every day, it's not the same anymore. If you're darker like me, you need more sun to get the proper vitamin D. If you're fair skin, you don't need as much sun to get that proper amount of vitamin D. And so it's good to see, if you think you have a healthy lifestyle, to go get checked and get your blood drawn just to see if you're at that adequate level. Because again, if you are, you're going to live a longer, healthier life than people who aren't. So you want to make sure, just to be on the safe side. And then, of course, you got to make sure when you're getting sun exposure, you want it to be at solar noon. And in the months between, especially in California, from March to October, that's about 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. roughly. Anytime your shadow is shorter than the height of your body, you're good. And you're going to be getting effective UVB rays to help you get proper vitamin D. Anything out of that time frame, you're not really doing a whole lot of benefit. And so that's why you want to get sun exposure in the daytime. That's also going to help your sleep as well. Expose as much skin as you can, obviously. The more skin, the more surface area, the more vitamin D. But I would say avoid the facial area. And the reason is because the skin is way thinner. I mean, feel your skin here and feel it here. You have a thick subcutaneous fat layer that's protective in anywhere else, but the face not so much. So it's more prone to photoaging, more prone to damage. So I would just wear like a cap, but keep everything else open. Tank tops, whatever it has to be. Get those legs exposed. And generally, you want to reach for that lightest shade of pink. Once you see that, you've got a fair amount of sun exposure. But you're talking the lightest shade, not dark red. And you want to shield the face again, like we talked about. And there's more. We talked about that internal sunscreen already. Not only is it antioxidants, but it's a lot of healthy fats, and in particular, omega-3 fats. It stops it dead in its tracks. It's anti-inflammatory. Very, very important. And optimized sleep, we talked about that. And then also too, intermittent fasting and an exercise called interval training. Both of those together drastically decrease cancer risk. In fact, they did studies again on rats, just putting rats with all of these tumors, putting them on an intermittent fasting regimen, literally took out their tumors. Just by eating the way we were designed to. And if you're confused about intermittent fasting, you can watch my other video on that. It's on the YouTube channel. And for the winter months, this is important because, again, solar noon, we only can get that type of vitamin D exposure from March to October. So all those other months, we got to be kind of looking at backup plans, and that's where supplementation can actually have its place. And if you're supplementing with D3, you've got to take it with vitamin K2. And vitamin K2's got to be in the form of MK7. Those two work synergistically in the body, very important. It actually activates the vitamin D, first of all. And so most supplements now actually have a combined pill that has both in there. So because a lot of people are getting it. So make sure you're taking it with K2. And again, 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter is the blood levels we want. So at the end of the day, you have a choice. We can live in this like fear-based system and say, oh my gosh, avoid sun at all costs. You could listen to the US, Health Surgeon General. You can listen to the American Academy of Dermatologists. You can do that and be scared and just, completely ignore what our ancestors went through. And I mean, we live on Earth for a reason. The sun's a main staple of Earth for a reason. So you can live in that fear-based thing, or you can literally just enjoy the sun and reap its benefits, live longer and healthier. So that's what I got for you. We have a whole list of references if you guys want to check out any of those on your own. You can see these more clearly once it goes on the YouTube. It's going to blow these up. Thank you.